Swords in One Piece are common weapons used by pirates, marines, samurais, and others. But there are some swords that are special. For instance, the 12 Supreme Great Swords, the 21 Great Grade Swords, and the 50 Skillful Great Swords. But what makes these swords special? Besides being forged by famous blacksmiths, I think they are special because these swords have haki in them. When the blacksmiths were forging these swords, they did fuse their own haki with steel, and that's why these swords are a different level than the other swords. Zoro said that, "I have heard that the hardness of a black sword is unparalleled. Even if a dinosaur stepped on it, it would not bend a millimeter. The best swordsmen can use their haki to coat their swords and also use it to attack. I think the best blacksmiths can infuse their haki with steel permanently, and that's why these swords are so different from the rest and they became famous." This theory is based on 3 points. Number 1. When Mihawk did ask Zoro, "Can you coat your swords with haki?" Zoro says no. And Mihawk says, "Every sword can turn into the black sword." So the reason why Mihawk's sword is black is due to haki, and that's why he is saying to Zoro, if you use your own haki, any sword can turn into the black sword. Mihawk's sword is black even when he is not touching it, so this is not because of his own haki, but the sword is made like that. But this doesn't mean that Mihawk doesn't use haki when he is fighting, because as we know, the strength of haki depends on the person. For example, Luffy said about Cracker that his armament haki is the strongest he has ever come across. When Mihawk fights people that he doesn't consider to be strong, I don't think he uses haki because he knows that these people cannot damage his sword. But I do think that he did use haki when he fought Vista. Mihawk knew his name and that he was the best swordsman in the Whitebeard Pirates. Point number 2. The sword Shisui is also a black sword just like Mihawk's sword. Zoro said that this sword is heavier than the previous sword that he had, and when he did use his attack with the new sword, he said that the power of the attack has increased. In case that you did not know what is the source of this attack that Zoro uses, it is haki. To be more specific, armament haki. Armament haki can be used to attack as well and not just for defense. Zoro said that the attack is more powerful now that I am using Shisui. Zoro's attack did not increase all of a sudden, and that's why this attack is more powerful now, but what did change is his sword. And this is why I think that these black swords have haki, otherwise it doesn't make sense why the attack is more powerful now. Zoro also says that this attack did cause too much random destruction, and that's proof I'm not good enough at using it yet. Zoro here is not talking about his swordsmanship, because he is a great swordsman. Even back then, before entering the Grand Line, Zoro was known in East Blue as a great swordsman, but he's talking about how to handle a black sword when he's using this attack. Zoro did learn to control his haki, but now he also needs to learn how to control the haki that this sword has. And the third point, at the beginning of the story, when Zoro went to buy new swords in that shop, when he picks up a sword, the salesman says to him, "That sword is a cursed sword, and it is known to have killed the previous owner." Now, one thing I would like to make it clear is that I do also think that this sword has haki even though it is not completely black. Usually, in manga and anime, this is how most of the swords are drawn, half white and half black. Now, whether Oda is using this style as well or not, that's not important, because in this video, I am talking only about the famous swords. Like I said at the beginning of the video, the 12 Supreme Great Swords, the 21 Great Grade Swords, and the 50 Skillful Great Swords. Now the question is, if these swords that are half white and half black have haki as well, why the blacksmiths did not make them with haki completely? Zoro gave the answer to this question. When he was using the black sword, he said that this sword is heavier than the previous one. It really does make the difference to a swordsman the weight of the sword, because the lighter the sword, the quicker the movements, and they can fight for a longer period of time without stopping. The other thing is that when Zoro fought Mihawk at the beginning of the story, Zoro's swords were all half white and half black, but only one of them did not break, and the one who did not break is the sword that is known as the 21 Great Grade Swords. Mihawk did use only one attack. The two other swords broke because they did not have haki, and that's why they were weaker, while the sword that had haki did not break by the same attack. When Zoro did pick up that sword in the shop, he said that this sword is cursed. When the salesman said, "Did you know?" Zoro said, "No, but I could tell." Based on what he is saying, it seems like Oda has introduced the supernatural element to the story. like ghosts, spirits, and curses. But I don't think this is the case at all. Zoro said something similar about Shisui. He said it looks like this sword is not well behaved. Does this mean that Shisui is a cursed sword as well? Zoro did sense something, but that was not a curse, just haki. Back then Zoro was not as good with haki as he is now. He did learn to coat his swords with haki only during the time skip. The stories that surround these swords, I think they are just stories that people made up over time, but I don't think they are 100% false. I do believe that there were swordsmen who were killed because of their swords, and when other swordsmen did pick up their swords, they also died. But the reason why I think these swordsmen died is due to them not being able to use these swords, and not due to the swords being cursed. Zoro said himself about the black sword that I am not used to handling this sword yet, even though he is a great swordsman. The attack that he uses became more powerful, and also he says that it looks like this sword is not very well behaved. And that is what I think did happen to those swordsmen that were not good enough to use this type of sword. You can see here how powerful are these haki attacks. They can cause huge damage to objects, and it would be a lot worse if a human is hit by those. Even oars did move out of the way. But if someone that doesn't know how to use these haki attacks, then these attacks can backfire. The two swordsmen that Oda is showing in this panel, both of them are falling backward. I think this could be because they were trying to use the same attack that Zoro uses, but instead of hitting the target, the attack did blow up and they were the ones who got hit. But the salesman did recognize that Zoro is not an ordinary swordsman and he gave him the sword for free. Thanks for watching, like and share if you liked this video, and subscribe for more One Piece videos.